Two condemned heroes, a desperate, frantic escape, and a massive, terrifying war looming large enough to consume entire kingdoms and change the face of the world forever.
A pretty intense starting point.
It is. You know that agonizing moment right after you think you've achieved safety, only to realize the real battle, the one with global stakes, hasn't even begun?
Oh, absolutely, that sinking feeling.
That's where we start today. We are looking at a scenario of maximum jeopardy. How does one person survive, let alone win, when the most powerful ruler in the world has diverted his entire war machine just to track them down?
It feels impossible from the outset.
Okay, let's unpack this.
We must.
Good.
The pressure here is immediate and almost unbearable.
Today's deep dive is into the high-stakes narrative of the Savior's Army, and we are treating the available source material, the excerpt and notes, not as a simple book summary, but as an urgent geopolitical and psychological intelligence.
A proper analysis.
Exactly. Our mission is to understand the scope of the external conflict, analyze the compromised internal nature of the protagonist, and dissect the massive world-ending risks laid out in the story that threaten to destabilize the entire...
And it really is the entire region.
We need to figure out in minute detail exactly what it takes to fight a massive organized war when you are already running for your life and fighting against yourself.
What's fascinating here is the brutal, dizzying speed of the escalation. I mean, Leila and Tobias have just managed tensely localized personal trial.
Right. They escaped the sovereigns.
And that brief personal success, that moment of triumph and just pure survival, it's instantly invalidated.
Gone in a flash.
They pivot without any breathing room,
Yeah.
from being simple fugitives hunted by a local force to becoming the immediate central linchpins of an inter-realm global geopolitical conflict.
It's more than a pivot. It's a catastrophic paradigm shift. One minute, they're fighting to save their own lives.
And the next, they're fighting to save every single allied realm. The narrative absolutely refuses to grant them a safe harbor or any time for recovery. It establishes overwhelming odds instantly.
Right out of the gate.
We are looking at a story defined by flight, by profound internal weakness and psychological compromise, and, most important, by the desperate, near-impossible necessity of building a counterforce.
A counterforce capable of fighting the most powerful, centralized entity in their world.
And the survival of this entire coalition of allied realm hinges entirely on two people who are themselves barely maintaining their psychological and magical stability.
The scale of the task is truly paralyzing, so let's start there. Let's start with the external environment, because it defines the severity of their crisis. We know the sovereign is not just initiating conflict, he is actively waging war against the allied realms.
Yes, and that phrasing is so important.
This isn't just aggression, this is total commitment to conquest.
And the implication of this scope needs careful dissection. When the source says waging war, you're right. We are not talking about a quick military expedition to seize territory or, punish a single disobedient prince.
No, this is much bigger.
This implies a massive unified threat that demands a multi-front military effort across significant distance. The term allied realms itself confirms a diverse and sprawling political landscape.
A landscape that the sovereign aims to conquer completely and absorb into his singular regime.
True sight.
If we think about this like a serious military campaign, the logistical and organizational requirements for the sovereign must be just staggering.
That's absolutely unimaginable for most. It sustained a war against multiple allied forces simultaneously.
Which means fighting on different fronts, across different terrains, perhaps against different military doctrines.
It requires a level of infrastructure that is, as you said, almost unimaginable.
It speaks volumes about the existing consolidation of his power, doesn't it?
It tells us almost everything we need to know about him. To successfully prosecute a multi-front war, the sovereign's empire must already have a flawless supply chain.
Meaning efficient control of resources, food production, armaments manufacturing,
medical support across vast territories, you name it. Secondly, the communication and command structure must be instantaneous and absolute.
No room for error.
None. If armies are spread across multiple realms, any breakdown in messaging or loyalty could result in swift defeat. His forces must be incredibly well-funded and, crucially, deeply loyal.
So they're operating without political dissent or internal resistance from their home bases.
It would have to be that way. It suggests a highly advanced imperial bureaucracy supporting the war effort.
So this isn't just a powerful king.
No, it's a fully functional, monolithic war machine.
And we also have to consider the nature of these allied realms.
That's a great point. They wouldn't be allied unless they had significant differences, right?
Distinct cultures, maybe competing political interests, different military specialties.
Yeah, one might have strong cavalry, another powerful magic users. The sovereign isn't fighting one cohesive nation. He is fighting a coalition, which is inherently fragile.
And he must know that.
For him to feel confident in prosecuting this kind of overwhelming multi-front assault, he must either have overwhelming superiority in arms
or a masterful strategy for exploiting the internal weaknesses and divisions of the Allied.
That would be my guess. He's playing chess while they're playing checkers.
So if the sovereign succeeds, the stakes for you, for the listener, are existential. We're looking at wide-ranging destruction, mass casualties, and a potential total loss of sovereignty.
And not just for one nation, but for an entire political system. It's about erasing distinct political identities and establishing absolute monolithic control.
So failure for Leila and Tobias means the death of freedom for countless diverse peoples.
It is the ultimate zero-sum contest on a political scale. But here is the critical intelligence nugget, the detail that reframes the entire war.
I was waiting for this.
Despite all this logistical global effort, the sovereign's primary focus is much, much narrower.
Yes, the source gives us a critical defining the sovereign's first objective above throwing legions at the Allied army to find Leila, the savior of Thesson, and kill her before she can thwart.
And this is where we must ask the fundamental intelligence question. Why?
Why does the most powerful ruler in the world divert resources and focus from winning a massive active geopolitical war to hunt down?
The answer defines the narrative tension. It means Leila does not represent a military challenge. She poses an existential threat to the very foundations of his operation.
I have to challenge that. Isn't it equally possible that the sovereign views her not as a power challenge, but as a political liability? You know, the ultimate rally.
A symbol.
Exactly. Wouldn't prioritizing the decapitation of the symbol be a practical military decision to cause chaos among the Allied realm?
That is a very important distinction, and it's a valid strategic point. But I think the language, the specific phrase, thwart his plan, pushes us toward the former, the existential threat.
How so?
Well, if she were only a symbol, a prolonged war against the Allied realms would eventually neutralize her influence through attrition and despair. You just grind them down.
And hope fades.
Precisely.
Oh.
But if she threatens his plan, that implies the plan is time-sensitive, specific, and fragile.
So not just conquer everyone.
Now, it's something more precise. Maybe a magical ritual, the capture of a key artifact, or a non-military structural change to the world's power balance that only she can stop.
So he's not just trying to stop a rebellion. He's trying to prevent a specific, catastrophic failure of his ultimate goal.
That's how I read it. Her power, or her symbolic role as the savior of Thesson, must be the single greatest vulnerability for the sovereign's long-term strategy. She is the ultimate mechanism of reversal.
The one thing that can undo everything he's built.
Exactly. This reveals that the war he's waging against the Allied realm is perhaps just setting the condition, a necessary distraction or a precursor to the final move.
A means to an end.
The sovereign believes that if he can eliminate Leila, the war becomes a mop-up operation because his ultimate defining goal becomes unstoppable.
That tells us the stakes are high personal stakes driving the grand conflict rather than the grand conflict being the primary.
Leila is the bottleneck he must clear.
And this grounding of the global scale in a sharp, singular target creates incredible tension for every resource deployed, every soldier marching is ultimately a failed attempt to find Leila.
And what is the immediate reality for Leila and Tobias as they carry this terrifying bird? They are described as on the run.
And the realm is crawling with enemy soldiers.
The notes state that remaining unseen is nearly impossible.
That phrase, nearly impossible, is key, isn't it? It eliminates any potential for lengthy strategic planning, extended recovery.
It's all reaction, no proact.
It sets up continuous, claustrophobic stress like trying to breathe underwater. If the realm is crawling with soldiers, we must infer that the sovereign's infrastructure extends far beyond standard military.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about magical tracking systems, widespread use of spies or informants.
And potentially manipulated civilian populations who are incentivized to report fugitives.
It transforms every local community, every forest path, every temporary shelter into a potential trap. This relentless pressure is a massive drain on their mental and emotional reserves.
Just think about the logistics of survival under these conditions.
You can't. I mean, how do they acquire food or medicine? How do they communicate without interception?
How do they sleep for an hour knowing the entire state apparatus is focused on their demise?
Every basic human necessity becomes a life or death gamble.
The narrative tension never dips because there's simply no place for it to dip.
You can't. The inability to remain unseen means they must constantly rely on instinct, luck, and possibly their innate, unpredictable powers to evade capture.
It forces them into high-risk, high-reward situations.
But the source adds a critical layer here. Despite this total saturation of the enemy, they are not alone. It notes that Familiar faces join them on their quest,
which is a slight flicker of hope.
but also a tremendous risk multiplier.
Why would anyone rational join such a seemingly doomed flight? I mean, they are joining the two most wanted people in the world.
Right. And this is where the simple act of joining instantly introduces the theme of loyalty versus betrayal. These familiar faces provide essential support, tactical aid, perhaps, or knowledge of local safe routes. But they instantly increase the logistical burden and the risk of detection. A larger group leaves a far bigger footprint. More people mean more supplies needed, more visibility.
More possibilities for dissent or weakness under interrogation, and certainly more noise.
And since the source explicitly hints at betrayal later, we have to question the motive of these allies.
Do they join out of pure loyalty to the savior?
Or necessity, because their own homes are gone. Or do they join with a hidden motive dictated by the sovereign?
A plan?
Could be. The complexity of their journey is therefore twofold. They are trying to escape the sovereign's deadly grasp, but they are simultaneously trying to build something.
A cohesive fighting force.
All while being uncertain about who among them is genuinely loyal. That blend of desperate speed and focused purpose, executed under total duress, is almost impossible to maintain.
Especially since, as we're about to discuss, the leaders themselves are compromised.
That internal instability brings us perfectly to the analysis of the two central figures.
So we've thoroughly established the overwhelming external threat posed by the sovereign's mobilized empire. A terrifying picture.
It really.
Now, let's analyze the two people expected to bear this impossible burden. Leila and Tobias. Leila starts with the ultimate public title, the Savior of Thesson.
And that title is political gold.
It implies purity, sacrifice, and perhaps a magical destiny destined to restore balance.
That title is the source of their authority. It's the essential currency they need to recruit their army and legitimize their desperate cause to foreign powers. It's the banner under which people might risk their lives.
But the source immediately throws a devastating wrench into that.
It does, with a crucial, terrifying detail. Leila wasn't solely the savior. She could be a destroyer, too.
That duality detail is absolutely critical. It prevents the listener from relying on a standard hero arc. You think you know who she is, but you don't.
It fundamentally complicates her role. A savior who possesses the capacity for destruction means the salvation of the realm may not be a clean, purely moral victory.
There will be a cost.
A huge one. It implies that victory might require massive, perhaps morally ambiguous action, unacceptable collateral damage, or even the sacrifice of her own virtue or sanity.
So the power she wields is not intrinsically benevolent.
No, it is simply overwhelming, uncontrolled force.
So let's explore the narrative consequence-destructive capacity. How does this complicate their diplomatic efforts?
All massive.
If she walks into a foreign king's court asking for troops, and they know she might accidentally level their city in a moment of stress,
Her credibility just drops to zero. Exactly. Her reputation as the savior might get her an audience, but her reputation as a potential destroyer will lead to immediate, deep mistrust.
which undermines the core mission to secure an army.
Completely. Furthermore, how does this destructive capacity manifest tactic? Is it a slow burn, a gradual corruption of her magic, or is it a sudden, volatile, catastrophic release?
The source leans heavily on the volatility, doesn't it? It mentions the major internal threat right alongside her duality. Leila's magic takes on a mind.
And this is the ultimate narrative time bomb. Her greatest weapon is the very thing she cannot trust.
That's terrifying.
The loss of control over her magic is not a side effect of stress. It turns her into an active, immediate liability to her ally, the familiar faces, and most critical, to Tobias.
Right. Imagine trying to lead a fragile coalition where your commander might suddenly unleash an uncontrollable force in the middle of a delicate negotiation or a defensive battle.
It's a nightmare scenario. It means her primary internal struggle is not against an external enemy, but against the very nature of her power.
So her quest transforms from simply using her power effectively to mastering it under maximum flight conditions. The danger comes from the core of who she is.
And this volatility creates a massive psychological burden for Tobias.
Let's turn to him then. Her champion, and part of the couple described as the condemned lovers.
That phrase, condemned lover, is so charged with history.
It is. We assume this condemnation is moral or social, perhaps forbidden by the sovereign. But given the high-stakes magical warfare we're talking about, maybe their bond itself is magically prohibited.
Making their relationship an active liability to the Allied cause. What does that mean for their escape?
Well, if the condemnation is magical, say, prophecy stating their union brings ruin, then their very existence as a couple undermines the recruitment mission.
So they aren't just fugitives, they are cursed objects.
Potentially. But regardless of the source of the condemnation, it is clearly a massive contributing factor to Tobias' central conflict.
Yes, as Layla's champion, he was meant to be her rock, the primary military leader responsible for her tactical survival. But his conflict is entirely psychological.
Tobias' inner demons fight their way to the surface.
We see that mirror image again, and it's narratively brilliant.
It is. Layla struggles with control over external, overwhelming power,
While Tobias struggles with internal control, his psychological or possibly literal dark forces.
which means both leaders are fundamentally compromised precisely when the world demands maximum stability.
You couldn't have put it better. And for Tobias, these inner demons are critical. They could be deep-seated guilt from failures in the tournament, repressed trauma.
Or perhaps a literal manifestation of dark magic resulting from their conflict.
That's a very real possibility.
Yeah.
So how does this psychological failure manifest practically in his role as champion?
It's more than just feeling sad.
Oh, much more. Despair in a champion causes tactical paralysis, poor judgment, and, crucially, an inability to provide the unwavering protection Layla requires, especially when her own power is unstable.
If he can't trust his own decision-making process, how can his soldiers or the allied realms trust him to lead their defense?
Exactly. His stated struggle to stay optimistic is the canary in the coal mine.
Explain that.
Well, optimism is another word for certainty in the future. If he loses that, he loses his strategic vision. The internal fight creates a continuous source of conflict.
They have to fight the external enemy while ensuring neither of them succumbs to their own internal
Weaknesses which are equally capable of destroying the mission.
They are operating at maximum vulnerability when the world demands maximum strength. The tension is almost unbearable.
It really is. But despite all this, the betrayal, the death, the demons, the uncontrollable magic, and the crushing weight of the world war, the source gives us one immutable grounding.
They are certain of nothing but their love.
And we have to frame this as the emotional core, the strategic anchor of the entire narrative.
In a world defined by uncertainty, where allied leaders might betray them, magical powers fail, and even their own minds might turn against them.
Their relationship serves as the sole, reliable constant.
This powerful, certain bond is not just romantic window dressing, is it?
Not at all. It is the operational coherence of the mission. It is the anchor that prevents both Layla and Tobias from completely succumbing to their respective weaknesses. Layla's volatility and Tobias's despair.
Without that, they'd fall apart.
If they didn't have this certainty, the sheer weight of the war and their internal compromises would instantly render them non-functional.
It stabilizes the political mission. They can trust each other, even if they can't trust their own power or minds.
This is the foundation upon which they attempt to build an army.
But here's the strategic vulnerability created by this anchor.
I was just about to say, since this love is their single point of certainty and strength, the sovereign, once he identifies this ultimate bond, will certainly target it to break them.
Their greatest strength is simultaneously their biggest, most predictable vulnerability to a savvy antagonist.
The cost of their love might become the ultimate sacrifice demanded by the war. If the enemy can exploit Tobias's demons through Layla, or force Layla to choose between her lover and her destructive power, the mission collapses completely.
A chilling thought as we turn to the logistics of their desperate quest.
Get it.
Let's pivot to the actionable. What are the condemned lovers, unstable in magic and mind, actually trying to achieve while being chased by the greatest military power the world has ever seen?
The goal is concrete and enormous.
Yeah.
They must secure an army.
And the need for this army is a direct result scale of the sovereign's aggression against the allied realm, which we've already covered.
Exactly. The familiar faces who join them in flight are, by definition, insufficient to fight a multi-front global war. They are undertaking a desperate recruitment quest, a necessity born out of the scope of the conflict.
And the language used specific, securing an army.
It is. It's not just about finding powerful mercenaries or a small band of rebels.
No, the goal is to secure an army that can rival the sovereigns. That implies a massive organizational effort.
Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, of highly trained, loyal troops, equipped and capable of standing against the sovereign's massive, centralized, established military.
That requires three monumental tasks simultaneously.
At least, first, desperate diplomacy. They need to convince powerful, likely skeptical foreign leaders that they are worth backing.
That they are not just doomed fugitives, but the genuine savior who can offer victory.
Second, martial recruitment and organization executed while being the most wanted people in the world. And third,
Logistical genius, ensuring that the armies they raise can actually be fed, equipped, and trained effectively.
All while on the run. And the success of this recruitment must be decisive enough to actually shift the balance of power. They need resources, training, and political guarantees that only a major established military force can provide.
This is the only way to transform the fragmented defensive war of the Allied realms into a cohesive, offensive force capable of pushing back the sovereign.
And this mission is compounded immensely by the fact that they must travel across foreign land to achieve this goal.
That immediately introduces immense complexity and peril. Foreign lands mean new cultures, differing military doctrines,
Ancient grudges and language barriers.
their savior title might hold no weight whatsoever. They might be viewed as irrelevant or even dangerous outsiders.
That's a huge point. They lack immediate local support and must navigate territories that might be neutral, isolationist, or actively sympathetic to the sovereign's regime.
Or have already signed non-aggression pact.
Yes, every border crossing is a risk. Every negotiation is a potential trap. They must be experts in local power dynamics, determining whether the local authority is political, magical, or religious.
And whether that leader is susceptible to bribes, genuine pleas for help, or sheer terror.
This level of constant strategic recalculation, performed while exhausted and running, is physically and mentally shattering.
They need to be diplomats, intelligence analysts, and military commanders, all while living moment to moment. It's an impossible job.
And speaking of military challenges, the dangers they face are not limited to human soldiers, no matter how numerous. The source specifies they must battle unimaginable horrors.
Which instantly elevates the conflict far beyond traditional siege warfare or infantry skirmishes.
Way beyond. Unimaginable horrors suggests the sovereign utilizes, or they encounter naturally in these foreign lands, magical, monstrous, or supernatural forces that break conventional tactical doctrine.
This raises the bar for the scale of violence. We are no longer talking about we are talking about surviving encounters with things that defy human comprehension.
Things which they may not have the means to defeat.
The sheer terror of encountering an unimaginable horror must be paralyzed.
It's one thing to fight a legion, it's another to fight something you can't even name, something that defies the rules of physics or biology they're familiar with.
And this directly impacts Layla's internal struggle, doesn't it?
It has. Conventional weapons may be useless against these horrors, requiring her unstable, destructive magic to be the only viable defense.
Which inevitably pushes her closer to losing control and potentially turning her destructive capacity on her own allies.
It creates a dangerous feedback. The greater the external threat, the more they must rely on their own compromised, volatile powers, increasing the internal risk.
It's a vicious cycle.
But the most insidious threat is the human one, which ties directly back to their primary vulnerability, the fact that they are certain of nothing but their love.
That threat is death and betrayal lurking everywhere.
Betrayal is a critical, systemic threat, especially in the context of trying to recruit an army from foreign lands.
Whom can they truly trust? Not just among local, but within their own small, growing group of familiar faces.
The context here is key. Betrayal is highly incentivized by the sovereign. A foreign leader might sell out Leila and Tobias to save their own realm from the sovereign's massive war machine.
Or an ally might betray them for immense reward, or simply out of despair, believing their cause is doomed.
The psychological warfare they face is constant. Every potential ally, every source of information, every offer of shelter must be viewed through a lens of potential fatal deception.
The source doesn't just mention betrayal, it suggests it is lurking around every corner.
That phrasing is chilling. It implies it is a pervasive, hidden element of their entire environment, almost a background radiation of untrust.
So the journey itself is a process of brutal
trying to discern genuine loyalty from fatal deception, all while fighting horrors, organizing an army, and evading a worldwide man.
This desperate, complicated equation covering massive geographies and deep psychological pits boils down to a single zero-sum outcome.
Yes, the source leaves no ambiguity about the result.
The final question posed by the source is a clear, stark binary. Will they survive to reclaim the realm, or will they perish beneath the sovereign's power?
And that confirms the high-stakes, all-or-nothing nature of the conflict. There is no middle ground, no negotiated peace, no political exile, and no compromise.
It's win or die.
They either achieve absolute victories, driving the sovereign back and reclaiming their homeland in the Allied realms, or they suffer absolute annihilation.
The narrative is structured to ensure that every single choice they make, tactical, psychological, or diplomatic, carries life and death consequences for the entire political system.
Every choice matters.
This ultimate payoff confirms that the listener is invested in a story where the threat of failure is total, immediate, and world-ending, driven by the two most compromised yet most necessary people.
It's an incredible setup.
Let's pull all these threads together then.
Let's briefly synthesize the profound tensions we've analyzed today. The entire structure of the Savior's Army is built upon this essential duality of risk.
A duality of risk. I like that.
On one side, we have the immense global external threat, the sovereign waging war against entire allied Rome, and simultaneously making Leila's death his single most important operational goal.
The macro.
And on the other side, we have the profound internal struggle, Leila's destructive, uncontrollable magic, the power that might save them or destroy them.
And Tobias's deep psychological warfare against his inner demons, which threatens to undermine his ability to lead and protect the might.
The narrative is driven by this urgent and nearly impossible race, the need to acquire an army strong enough to decisively shift the balance of power.
All while managing debilitating personal vulnerabilities that threaten to destroy them from within, or worse, destroy the very people they are trying to save.
The fact that they are compromised is the source of the narrative tension and the intellectual hook.
It really is.
If Leila were a perfectly controlled savior and Tobias a pillar of unwavering strength, the story would simply be a military mark. It would be boring. Exactly. Because the savior is also a destroyer, and the champion is struggling with darkness. The path forward is messy, volatile, profoundly human.
The story becomes about whether human or semi-human will their love can overcome the chaos inherent in immense power.
That's the core question.
For you, the listener, this deep dive shows that even within a grand fantasy epic filled with world-spanning wars, the most compelling and terrifying elements are those persons.
It always comes down to the person.
The ultimate question isn't solely whether they can gather enough soldiers, it's whether they can maintain control of themselves, their sanity, and their power long enough to man those.
A battle on two fronts, always.
Before we sign off, a few logistical details on the source material we analyzed today. The notes confirm that the Savior's Army is officially available for pre-order in not just ebook, but also in paperback and hardback formats.
Well, that's good to know.
So if you prefer a physical copy, whether soft or durable, they are ready for collect.
And based on the explicit content warnings included in the source material itself, a necessary and clear reminder that this is not a light fantasy read.
Not at all.
The book contains graphic violence and adult content and is specifically recommended for readers ages 18 and older.
Right.
The narrative demands that maturity to process the severity of the global conflicts and the deep psychological depth of the material we've just spent time dissecting.
Absolutely. The level of unimaginable horrors and the detailed internal battles we discussed today certainly fit that content warning.
No question.
So we established that the one certain truth in this entire chaotic, betraying, war-torn world is the profound love between Leila and Tobias, the condemned.
Their foundation, their operational anchor.
So I leave you with this provocative closing thought to mull over as they begin their journey. If their love is the only certainty in a world defined by betrayal and overwhelming power, what happens if the success of their quest?
The securing of the army, the necessary victory over the sovereign.
What happens if that requires them to sacrifice that certainty?
Oh, that's a brutal question.
Does the champion have to sacrifice his love for the sake of the savior's victory and the survival of the allied realm? Or does the destroyer have to choose the certainty of that bond over the destructive actions required to win the war and save everyone else?
That is the highest possible emotional cost. The necessity of saving the realm versus the single thing that makes their individual lives worth saving.
A terrible choice.
A terrible choice that dictates the final outcome.
Something to think about as they start their desperate journey into the unknown. That's it, Dive.
See you next time.